The island of Savaii in Western Samoa is about as far from Britain as you can get. It's just one of the tiny Polynesian islands off the east coast of Australia. And in my search to find traditional survival skills around the world, I'm headed for the coastal village of Falealupo. The islands have been inhabited for about 1,000 years. Settlers arrived here by boat, paddling huge distances across the Pacific to find new lands and a new life. It may look like paradise, but you can't live off the view. The Polynesians certainly didn't travel thousands of miles to set up shop here because of the scenery. It's a long swim between the islands, so to live here, you've got to be self-sufficient. And that means learning how to find food and build shelters in a land that's harsher than it looks. The seas are powerful with treacherous currents. Cyclones regularly sweep through these islands. The latest one flattened this concrete church in minutes. Which is partly why villages like Falealupo have hung on to their traditional skills, because they're effective. It's also because here, Samoan culture is still strong. The village is governed by a council of chiefs who ensure that their heritage, skills and close sense of community remain intact. They manage to use chainsaws and electric ovens alongside their old ways. This is the carver ceremony, held in a traditional house or whale, which welcomes each guest to the village. Ia Manuia. Whales were designed to stand up to cyclones, torrential rain and sun. They are the most common sort of house in the village, built straight from the forest. We're going to need several different kinds of wood. This is the paupaka, which is used for the major supports. For the rafters, we're going to need this, pau. And this is aso, for the ribs to hold the thatch. The traditional whale has rounded ends, so they've picked a piece of wood with a natural curve in it, like this, and they're going to increase that by cutting it. In Falealupo, about a quarter of the houses use corrugated iron for their roofing. But for most whales, the Samoans turn to what they call the tree of life, the coconut palm. The leaves make just about anything in the village: baskets, mats, plates, hats, beds and roofs. On a big project, you can see why the Samoans need their sense of community. On his own, one man would take weeks to build a good whale. Together, they can build a house in a day. They work fast, and trying to get them to slow down for the cameras was nigh on impossible. A layer of these woven coconut leaves will keep the sun off, but to keep the rain out, particularly in the wet season, you need 2 layers. And they've got a natural curve which helps to shed the rain. The ribs are being tied on with bark, and that comes from the fowl, which is the wood used for the rafters. This dead coral from the beach will be used to make the floor of the Savaii. That helps to keep the sand out of everything and makes for a hygienic home. No house is complete without blinds, and these ones keep the wind off as well as the sun. The Savaii is tailor-made for the islands and the climate. When the recent cyclone struck, traditional Savaii stood up better than most modern houses. The open sides allow the air pressure inside to equalise when a shockwave hits, whereas most closed structures just explode. The cyclones of 1990 and 91 were the worst in recorded history. They devastated the normal water supplies, flattened thousands of trees and scores of houses. But it did remind the Samoans just why their old skills are still important.
Everyone was busy trying to put up structure and trying to find food, trying to look for water, which is their own traditional knowledge and our own culture. And I think for me, it was one of the beautiful, although heartbreaking feeling for me that thank God that our people still had that traditional knowledge from the forest, that they were able to help themselves.
Water is one thing you'd think there'd be no shortage of, but you can't drink seawater. And on this side of the island, there are very few streams. Inland, you could hope for rain, but out here in the dry, you've got 2 options. You can either dig for it or climb. There are no fancy climbing gadgets, just a foot strap. It needs to be strong, and hibiscus bark can support the full body weight 20 metres up. They're after coconuts, and villagers will climb these trees every day. Even without cyclones, water has to be tankered into the village, and that's an erratic supply at the best of times. A green husk shows it's immature. Inside there'll be little fruit, but plenty of watery milk. A mature nut is brown and invaluable for food and drink.